Hello, hello. Welcome back to another exciting episode of Amazing Entrepreneurs. I'm here with Martin Castellanos. He is with UMTC Consulting, and this episode's title is From Scared to Prepared. You're not going to want to miss why. Hey guys, welcome back to Amazing Entrepreneurs. This is the first episode we're recording in 2024. I'm excited that you came on. I mean, we're just getting started, but I'm here with my buddy Marty Castellanos. Castellanos.
That's right. Yep.
Yes, I got it right. Beautiful. Starting off the year right.
It is. It's a fancy Spanish name, and you rocked it.
Beautiful, beautiful. So UMTC. So I was going to break down the acronym, but I think that we were having a slight conversation prior to it. So tell us a little bit about yourself, the company, and what brings you here to the pod.
Cool. My name is Marty Castellanos. I'm a retired veteran, and I'm a retired police officer. And at the end of the two careers, I had 34 years of knowledge on. I had trained cops to take care of themselves and each other. I was an instructor, and I just had a real passion for it. I really enjoyed it. It was
real quick. So to start, UMTC is
Uncle Marty Training and Consulting.
Okay, and primarily you guys do.
Primarily, we do self-defense education.
Beautiful. And I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No,
I just
fair.
want to make sure that it's like, hey, why do we get into it?
Sure, you're the doctor.
No. So go back. So 34 years in both the service and in the police.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. I joined the Coast Guard in 1987 as a reservist, and I was with them for 27 years, part-time with a couple of activations for full-time work.
Oh, wow.
And then at the latter half of that, in 2001, I got hired by the Boca Raton Police Department. Okay. And I did over 20 years with them. So I overlapped two law enforcement careers.
Wow.
One was military and federal, and the other one was a local police department.
Okay, so we got to start with the Coast Guard, right? So
Sure.
80s in the Coast Guard.
80s in the Coast Guard.
In Miami.
In and out of Miami, yeah.
Okay, so you're scooping cocaine out of the water, right?
We were based out of Miami. We're going all around the Caribbean and the
Okay.
Eastern Pacific, trying to scoop coke out of the water,
okay.
chasing the pirates of the Caribbean.
In the cigarette boats.
That was like late 70s, early 80s.
Okay.
And I was doing it like late 80s, early 90s.
Okay.
And then in 98, I got on with a tactical unit that deployed around this side of the world to other countries, Central America, all the islands in the Caribbean, chasing smugglers and just kind of doing the trends, following the trends for smuggling.
Okay, so your previous profession, you got out and you're like retired. It's like, hey, I still have a passion about this, and this is self-defense.
Right. Yeah, after two professions, I got into training in the middle of my careers.
Okay.
And it was very rewarding. It really was, to help somebody be able to feel confident to do the job, give them the skill set they need, give them the mindset that they need. And this was law enforcement officers in the Coast Guard and with the police department.
Right.
When I saw the sunset of my career coming, I just didn't want to stop teaching.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what, I'm going to start my own company.
Well, you're a young guy.
Well, I color my hair.
Fair enough.
I eat a lot of fried food. I don't exercise.
Understood. But that's all right. You might not be able to catch up to them physically, but you can get them.
Right. Actually, my birthday's this month. I'm going to be 55.
Oh, well, happy early birthday. So you
Thanks.
do not, I mean, you look good, man.
I pride myself in not looking, I'm a large child, basically. And that's what keeps us young.
Fair enough. So you got straight out of like basically high school,
In fact, I joined the Coast Guard under the early enlistment program. My grades were good enough. I went to boot camp the summer after my junior year.
Okay.
So I was a reservist in my final year of high school.
Okay.
1 weekend a month in the Fort Lauderdale area.
Wow.
Patrolling and doing rescues and stuff.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, so a lot of rescue work too.
Mostly rescue work early on. Everybody in the Coast Guard did rescue, and they kind of specialized after that.
Okay.
So everybody starts with rescue, and I learned a lot there. It was like being a firefighter and a paramedic and stuff on a boat.
Yeah.
It was great being in the Fort Lauderdale area. It was really cool.
Yeah.
We used to call it station vacation.
Right.
But it was one of the busiest search and rescue units in the Coast Guard at the time.
Right.
I learned a lot, and then I kind of earned the law enforcement position. That was why I joined the Coast Guard. I wanted to be a cop, and I wanted a branch of the military that would give me law enforcement experience and learning.
Actually, that makes perfect sense.
I wasn't feeling college. I just wasn't. And in the late 80s, during the Cold War, the Soviet red threat was what all the other branches were geared towards.
Right.
And I was just like, well, that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a law enforcement, something that'll help me become a cop without a degree. I was just really, I wanted to be a cop, and I wanted a branch of the military that would give me law enforcement experience and learning. I want to scamming not going to college. I didn't want to. I just didn't want to.
You didn't want the college debt, or you didn't
right.
want the student loans that everybody
Right.
complains about.
And back then, everybody, teachers and parents, everybody's like, you need a degree to get the job you want. I'm like, no, I don't think I do.
Yeah.
And eventually, yeah, you did. But my veteran status waived the requirement. So a lot of police departments do that. So I paid my dues, learned on the job
Right.
with the Coast Guard. And that was on my resume for the police department. That helps a lot of veterans become cops.
Right. Well, that makes a whole ton of sense because, a lot of times that you have to get, and I didn't realize cops actually needed a degree or something typically I thought it was more like on the job, but this is like enlightening.
It was. The profession has evolved, throughout like the Middle Ages, what a watchman was, and in the colonies, what a watchman was. And then when the early United States police came kind of later on, obviously there's some dark periods in the history of the profession, the civil rights area. We learned from mistakes, and it's grown. When my dad was a cop, the gentleman wore a tie and a long sleeve shirt. If you wear a tie as a cop today, you're going to a ceremony or something like that.
Right.
It evolves. It evolves with it, kind of like the market for any business. You gotta adapt to it. You gotta learn different things, prepare differently, equip yourself differently.
So you said you did part-time for basically Coast Guard. You're part-time, you're a reservist, and then you got activated a couple times. What is that activation like?
An activate like Hurricane Andrew, everybody gets on alert. You're now on full-time status. Get dressed, pack a bag, come into the station. You're on full-time status until the governor declares the emergency over, and then you go back to part-time status. Desert Storm, same thing. Pack your bags, come to the unit. You're on full-time status until we don't need you anymore. And the Desert Storm lasted years, but they didn't keep me for years.
Yeah.
So in between the reserve gig where I was getting real experience from my goal of being a cop,
Right.
I was doing, what young kids do, minimum wage jobs where you wear a little plastic name tag, movie theaters, restaurants, retail, stuff like that.
Yeah, but you're super young at that time.
18, 19, 20. I was a cook at Hooters for like a year in Tallahassee.
There you go.
That was neat. It
Not
had
bad.
nothing to do with being a cop, but it was, it was educational.
It's like, the scenery wasn't bad.
No, it wasn't. Actually, it was neat. Learning about cooking and running
Right,
kitchen,
right.
the sanitation requirements and health codes and all the other stuff. I learned that I didn't want to be in that business. I did it for a solid year. I don't want to be in the restaurant business.
Right.
I like eating. I don't like cooking for strangers.
Yeah. No, I don't blame you.
Right.
Plus, it's got a whole scene with it.
Right. Retail, same thing. The profit and loss, the P&L that corporations kind of thrive on, their world is profit and loss. I knew that that's not what I wanted. My dad brought us to the United States for the American dream and opportunities. He said, you're going to be a doctor or you're going to be a businessman or something. I'm like, I'm not feeling it. I don't want to do that.
Question. So when did you come to the United States?
When I was 2 years old. It was 1971.
Okay.
January 16, 1971. My dad had come up with his dad and his brothers, and they got jobs and sent money back, and they transplanted the family, bit by bit, to where the whole clan was in Queens.
Okay, so in Queens.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And where did your family hail from originally?
Bogota, Colombia.
Ah, Colombia.
Right.
I saw, this is a little off subject, but I saw a Vice episode. They got this plant in Colombia where it basically, you blow the dust in their face and then they lose the inability to say no. So they basically, I know, if you're going to go home and you're going to be like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to Google it. Right. But
I might do it while you're doing a commercial plug.
Hey, you know what? That's not a bad idea. But so your dad was a cop in Queens?
My dad was a cop in Colombia for a little while.
Okay.
He was a federal agent.
Okay.
And then he got into a shooting. And my mom's like, you need a new job.
Right.
And so he got into doing something else. My grandfather worked at the American Embassy, and he had the opportunity to come to the United States and bring his sons. And like I said, they brought their family up. They got into maintenance. He was a building super in Queens and Manhattan.
Okay.
And down in Florida, they call it like a building engineer.
Right.
But he did maintenance, and he learned to fix anything. He learned a little bit of carpentry, a little bit of electrical, a little bit of plumbing, a little bit of all the other stuff. And he
made stuff happen.
Yeah, he was kind of like a jack of all trades to keep a building running for like an apartment, condos and stuff.
Right.
And it was, he was fit.
Yeah.
He He was fit. He was a muscular guy from work, not from going to the gym.
Right, and they know a whole lot about everything.
Yeah.
You know, because I worked back in my past life when I was 23. I worked at a nice hotel in my hometown, and there is a lot that goes on there, and they have a whole, they call them engineer, they call them engineering team or whatever, but it's really, I mean, it depends on where you're at.
Yeah, in New York, it was superintendent, and for short, it was super. And he started out as being a doorman. He was a doorman in those nice buildings with the big button-up jacket, with a military look, getting taxis for people. But then he saw the maintenance people going by, and he's like, yeah, I can do that. Like, I have tools. Right? And they gave him a shot, and he got into maintenance.
That's good. They probably liked him.
They did, and he moved up, and really did. He wanted me, like I said, to not be a cop. He specifically said, no, you're not going to be a police officer. And I'm like, no, I am.
Right.
But in Colombia, it's a different world.
Yeah.
Outside of the United States, people complain about cops here. Try going to another country and mouthing off to a cop. And it's different. And the cops aren't your friends. In some countries on this side of the world, if you couldn't get a job, you became a cop because they were always hiring. And there was no professional standards or stuff like this. Here in the U.S., it's different. Every state does their own thing. I think Florida does a great job of standardizing what we want cops to be.
Yeah, I think, without going too far off onto a tangent, but I agree with you. There's a lot of complaints about stuff that happens in America when there's no experience abroad.
Yeah, and I can't defend that. I can't defend somebody doing the wrong thing.
People do crappy things. Doesn't excuse it. However, the vast majority of, the experiences or the vast majority of people are just regular people, you know, and just trying to do a job and trying to be, and we have our problems, but for the most part, we're less corrupt. And what is corruption is, it's like, hey, the imbalance of power, right?
Exactly, and an abuse of power.
Abuse of power.
And people, and the government, or maybe a government official, getting something for nothing, and not providing you with a service like protection, safety in your neighborhood, and all the other stuff.
There's tons of countries, that cannot get out of their own way. That their economy is fine, but why are they not as successful as they are? Is because the level of corruption that there is.
Yeah, so I've been to some of those countries in the military, and I was like, you know what? Traveling the world with the military, with the Coast Guard, it was always just great to come home. And just we have no idea what we take for granted here in this country. It's the best country in the world. This is why everybody wants to come here. This is why my family came here, for the opportunities. We sometimes don't recognize that other countries don't have a sewer system, don't have food every day, don't have doctors, or forget healthcare, just doctors, hospitals. In some countries, a hospital is where you go to die, and they're afraid of the hospital. And those people come to this country, and you tell them to go to the hospital, and they freak out because they were used to something else. Some people, in another country, they got beat up by a cop or ripped off by a cop. They come to the U.S., they see a cop, they think of their experience in other countries. Anyway, like you said, that's a story for another pitcher. There's a whole pitcher of beers and back and forth. We could do that.
It's a good perspective, and I like talking about what makes what sets the mind frame of the person that we're speaking to, and how they get to the entrepreneurial experience to where they were like, hey, I have a whole lot of experience. I'm passionate about teaching and learning and showing people how to protect themselves in certain situations.
Exactly. And I'm bringing the perspective of a career veteran and a career police officer to my teaching services and what I offer, so that people get, the other side of the coin. Like if you had to, God forbid, use pepper spray or a baton or stun gun or a firearm to protect yourself, what happens after that? On TV or in the movies, it's self-defense, you're fine. No. In the real world, there's an investigation. You could get arrested, go into trial, all the other stuff. So the preparation for that goes into making the right decision. Responsible gun ownership isn't just buying a gun and I have it in the glove box or I have it in my nightstand. It's trained, like, to be business.
That's where I always get.
Sure. Well,
I was like, wait. How does he know me?
I train with a bunch of veterans and experienced law enforcement professionals who I admire greatly. One of them is Israel Matos. He's a Marine Corps veteran with 5 combat tours. He teaches self-defense, firearms, stuff like this in Central Florida. And he said it's hardware and software. You could buy the best computer for your business, but if you don't know how to operate it or you don't put the software on it, it's an expensive paperweight.
Yeah.
So a gun is a tool. It's a complex power tool. But if you don't train yourself, you're not getting the software to run that hardware. And as a police officer, I'm talking about what comes after the execution of the program.
Yeah, because I think you have different levels of, gun ownership, or at least for my perspective, because like, I do own, and but I'm not what you would say an enthusiast, right? But I have it in case the world, there's a zombie apocalypse.
Right.
I mean, I say it's
some people
easy.
have a gun in their house, like they have a smoke detector in their house.
Exactly.
Just in case.
Yes.
Just in case.
Yeah.
How often do you look at your smoke detector? How often
Right.
do you change the batteries?
I think, I think to myself, hey, I should go to the range, a couple times just to stay like, and it's very much not a priority because it's also not cheap either. So
if it was just a hobby to shoot recreationally,
Right.
it's an expensive hobby.
Right.
If you want to go nuts and buy all the nice hardware,
Yeah.
you can spend thousands of dollars on, we call them race guns. Like it's a nice deluxe. But you know what? If you have a bicycle, you can go back and forth to work. If you have a Maserati, you can go back and forth to work.
Yeah.
You want to find something in the middle,
Yeah, no, that's very much me. I just want to know that it's available for me if in case I ever need it.
Right. And another thing Izzy says is like when you got your driver's license, you got your learner's permit at like 16 or whatever, you weren't ready for the Indy 500. You weren't ready for the Florida Turnpike.
Right.
But you drive every day, and that's practice.
Right.
You drive well every day, that's good practice.
Right.
You drive bad every day, that's bad practice. Same thing goes with any self-defense tool, whether it's pepper spray, a stun gun, a baton, martial arts, firearms. You can't just buy it once, put it in the drawer, and say, cool, I'm ready.
Yeah.
What you need to do is train with it quarterly.
Right.
And that's not much.
That's not crazy.
That's not crazy.
No, that's
Right.
And honestly, it's not. It's fairly enjoyable too.
Yeah, and you know what? You could spend $50 on an hour or so of shooting and feel good about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or you could take your pepper spray out like once a quarter and shake it out in the parking lot and go, and all right, it works. I know it works. I know I can do what I got to do with my thumb.
Right.
And it's good. And don't do too much because then you empty it out.
Yeah.
Don't hit raccoons with it. Don't hit your neighbor.
Yeah. Don't
hit your kids.
Your
Hey, good morning.
Yeah.
Get ready for school.
Yeah. That's time out.
Right.
No,
Exactly.
no,
Right.
I said time out. No, I've got a 2-year-old that probably only respond. No,
I know people who would. I know people who like wing sauce that's hotter than the pepper spray that we take, and it wouldn't phase them.
Right.
But again, all those tools, there's an array of tools and the limitations for those tools.
Okay.
If you don't have an understanding of that, you're not ready for an emergency.
Sure. Question before we go, because I want to ask. I don't want to spend too much time on the Coast Guard because I know we got a lot of stuff to talk about, not a whole lot of time. But is there a story that stands out that you can tell? Or no? If not, then no.
You know what? It's a bunch of dumb little funny things.
Yeah.
Like it would take 27 years to tell you. What I can say about the Coast Guard is, like any veteran, like any branch of the military, I made lifelong friendships. I'm closer to some of the guys and gals that I was in the Coast Guard with than I am with my own family and holidays and all this stuff. And that's community.
Right.
And that's a fraternity, and it's a good thing.
It was an experience. Yeah.
A lot of people go to the military and grow up.
Right.
And they learn how to take care of themselves, take care of their finances, because it's sink or swim.
Right.
And you come out of that as an adult. And if you don't make a career out of it, it was an experience. And if you're a veteran selling homes, you got the discipline to just run your business right, run your home right, live your life right. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing.
So going back on experiences, so tell me about you have this Coast Guard, and I like how your mindset would be. You were born, and you're like, hey, we need to find a path, be it hit the American dream, and you always knew in the back of your head that you wanted to be at a level of service or law enforcement.
I knew I wanted to be a cop.
Yeah.
And my dad was a New York police auxiliarist for a little bit, not very long. So I mean, like that meant a couple of days a month he put on a uniform and went out and patrolled with full-time cops. And when I was like 8 or 9, I watched him getting dressed and going, and I was like, wow, my dad's a cop. I didn't know. I knew he was a building super, But I didn't know he was a cop too. And he explained what he showed me his gun one time, and he said, "Hey, look, this is a revolver. These are the bullets. This is how this works." And he told me so much about it that was boring.
Right.
Like he bored me out of my mind. And he goes, "Listen, you're not allowed to touch this. I'll take a shooting when you're older, but in the meantime, it's in this box. It's up here. Don't touch it." But by that time, he told me so much about the gun, I didn't care. But it took the mystery out of it,
Right.
and it wasn't something tempting, when I was home alone to go mess with it.
When do you remember when you first shot the gun, or what was the first?
I first fired a gun in boot camp in 1987,
Okay.
and I failed. I failed my qualification.
Really?
Yeah, the
Okay.
first time out, the guy next to me was like, boom, 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 startled me. I hit the ceiling, I hit the floor, I hit somebody else's target. They were like, fail, next. And in boot camp, they got to get thousands of people through the process. And
Right.
it's quantity, not like you're not there to learn, you're there to qualify.
Right.
So it wasn't until honestly, my first or second year after boot camp that I was able to qualify. And what I did was I bought my own gun and sat at home and got comfortable with it.
Okay.
It wasn't a scary thing. It wasn't, it wasn't loaded when I was learning about it. But when you're comfortable with a power tool, when you're competent, that helps you relax and learn.
Gotcha.
And that's what I try to do for my clients. Get over the fear of it's a big, scary monster. It's not. It's a power tool.
Yeah.
Here it is. It's unloaded. Hold it in your hand. Feel the weight. Let me tell you about the experience. And I get people safe. I get people the fundamentals. And then we go shooting, and they have a good time.
Yeah, man. And speaking of which, good times. We have a good time coming up for you. I'm about to go into an ad read, but before we do that, our episode title is not by mistake. So tell me a little bit about what you have going on at the beginning of the month.
Well, as a military trainer and as a police trainer, I spent a lot of time with people with the mechanics, form, and technique for any of these tools. And I got a lot of good questions, like legal questions. Can I shoot in this situation? Can I hit somebody in this situation? Can I pepper spray here? Can I handcuff here? And there were really good questions, but they cut into training time. So I came up with a seminar to take care of the legal questions, the preparation questions, and that gets that stuff out of the way, like as a primer, so that we can pick a tool and start training with it. And the seminar is called Scared to Prepared.
Yeah.
So it's pretty new. I help people go from scared to prepared. And
Right.
somebody said that was my elevator pitch. And I'm like, what's an elevator pitch?
Yeah.
Just because I wasn't in business for 34 years.
Right.
So scared to prepared is home security, personal awareness, self-defense, and the laws that apply, and the fight or flight lessons that we need to know about what happens automatically in your body when you're scared. When you're in that fight or flight mode, I explain what fight or flight is and how you can make it work to your benefit and not have it lead you into panic or fumbling your keys or failing when you're in a crisis.
Right, because that's when it counts.
Right. Yeah,
you
so-
prepare for all that stuff, and
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
hard to
But
know.
then somebody goes, bang, somebody attacks you, and,
Yeah.
and you're like, you drop everything and you weren't ready.
Yeah.
So Scared to Prepared is a seminar that's a primer to any self-defense choices you make. If you're not a gun guy, I'm not pushing guns. Guns aren't for everybody. If you'd rather do jujitsu to protect yourself, great. Come to Scared to Prepared and understand prevention, awareness, conflict avoidance. If you know there's going to be a fight tomorrow at 3 o'clock, don't show up. It's not about ego. It's about not getting hurt.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to make killers. I'm trying to make people that are paying attention to the world around them and avoiding confrontations, avoiding violence. You mitigate risk. If you're
Right.
aware of what's going on around you, you see danger coming from a long way off,
Right.
you buy yourself time.
Right.
And if you're prepared for what to do in that time, where it's get in a car and drive away, lock your doors, call 911, you do it calmly after working with me.
Yeah, or at least it's a deterrent, right? So
Exactly.
people feel
Yeah.
like you're like,
The way-
well, that's not the guy. You're like, if
Right. Yeah.
I'm not going to that guy.
Right, exactly. The bad guys that want a victim are looking at the herd and going, not him, not,
Not
her,
him, not him, not
With
him.
That guy's not
Yeah.
paying attention. That guy's looking at his phone. He's been walking for 3 blocks. He's not paying attention.
Gotcha.
They're going after that.
So I appreciate that. We're going to jump back to that here in just a second. But before that, we're going to slide on over here. If you guys have listened last episode, we had Randy Carpena from Sagacity Legal on, and she says that, do you know a person or a business that has a technological breakthrough or discovered a unique way to solve a problem? At first, they are a field of one, but eventually the competition catches up. The competition will always catch up. That's where Randy Carpena and the Sagacity Legal team comes in. She helps entrepreneurs, small businesses, and inventors turn their ideas and inventions into profit by securing their uniqueness before others can imagine the solution. Secure your brand and your success with Randy and her team today. Reach out to her at sagacitylegal.com. That's SAGACITY legal.com. Again, that's Sagacity Legal, SAGACITY legal.com. Or you can book time with Randy at meetwithrandy.com. That's Randy with an I. And she has a nice booking link up. She helped protect my brand. We were going through the copywriting process, and funny enough, we're talking about protection here today with Uncle Marty. So
and legal's important. If you don't know the law, how do you know that you're not doing it wrong?
Right.
You could you could think you're protecting yourself. You go over the lines, you're going to jail, and that defeats the purpose of protecting yourself and your family. I want to keep good people safe by educating them to protect themselves, but I want to keep good people out of jail. I want to keep good people out of court, because if you use a tool, any tool, pepper spray, a stun gun, a firearm, to protect yourself against a mugger, and that mugger goes to the hospital, you're getting sued.
Yeah.
If, God forbid, somebody dies as a result of you protecting yourself or your loved ones, their family is going to sue you, and they're coming after your house. They're coming after your business, and it's a risk that you want to be aware of. Now, I'm not trying to be doom and gloom, but if you're aware of it, you take steps to limit your liability by educating yourself and avoiding a bad day becoming a worse day.
Right. So tell me about your jump from the Marine, or not the Marine Corps, but the Coast Guard.
Right.
And that's I don't, because it's it's the United States Marine Corps, USMC, right?
Right. Yeah.
And UMTC.
Right.
So
and I'll even complicate it earlier. Right after the Revolution, the President Washington disbanded the Navy because we didn't need it and it's expensive. But we needed a small naval force to enforce customs for incoming goods, for businesses importing things. Paying those tariffs was funding the young nation. So the Revenue Marine Service was the early Coast Guard. They put a ship of law enforcement officials in every harbor, and they enforced customs coming in, like you would importing goods today.
Right.
And that became the Coast Guard.
Gotcha.
So it was a kind
interesting.
It was a kind of a Marine.
Yeah. No,
I'm not a Marine. Marines are the best at what they do. I wasn't good enough for the Marine Corps. I needed a different route. I admire Marines.
Yeah.
My buddy Izzy, he's a Marine.
Yeah.
Another buddy of mine, Boone Benton, is a Marine, and those guys are admirable. They really are.
Yeah, well, I mean, it sounds like, honestly, it sounds like this was the perfect place for you to be, given where you wanted to go.
It was, because I wanted to be a cop, and the Coast Guard had cop jobs.
Right.
And the reality is, cops of slang for somebody with law enforcement authority.
Right.
They weren't police officers.
Yeah.
They were boarding officers. They were federal officials.
Cop is slang, huh?
Cop is constable on patrol back in the old days. And it became cop.
The more you know.
It is.
My mind is blown. I wish I had that emoji, where the GIF or whatever, where it's like you see the stars.
I'll bet you Christian can do it in post editing. He's a whiz.
Yeah. By the way, Christian from Podcast Studios, giving him out a shout. We were out here, and Marty actually has been to our studio prior to this recording, right?
Yeah, I was invited to the grand opening. This is a great setup.
Yeah.
Shameless plug for podcast junkies.
That's right. That's right. Well, I will say not a shameful. No, you're right. Shameless plug. Yeah. So you got into
I got into the Coast Guard because I wanted to be a cop, and I didn't think you needed a degree to do every job you wanted.
Yeah.
So, like I said, the military was focused on the Soviet red threat.
Yeah.
But the Coast Guard had a real peacetime job at home, and it was an opportunity to do cop work.
Right.
So I did that part-time for 11 years, and then and full-time I was in security jobs, loss prevention, corporate jobs, kind of moved up. I learned a lot. Also learned that I didn't want to be in retail.
Yeah.
It was experience. I learned a lot from it. It was neat, but I didn't want to stay there.
Ultimately, it wasn't where you wanted to be.
Yeah, and in fact, in '97, I got laid off when Radio Shack sold the business I was assigned to.
Oh, okay.
I was a loss prevention agent for Radio Shack.
Okay.
At the computer.
I worked at Radio Shack way back in the day.
You remember the Computer City stores or
Yes.
the Incredible Universe stores,
Yes.
little companies they owned? I got hired for Incredible Universe. I got promoted to Computer City, but it started failing, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
And when they made it small enough to sell it, they
Yeah.
laid off about 100 of us. And I was unemployed.
Gotcha.
My reserve bosses in the Coast Guard said, hey, don't sweat. We can put you on active duty so that you got a paycheck and you can pay your bills and eat. But the Coast Guard's looking for people in your specialty. And so take a 3-year hitch and get back on your feet and then figure out your next move.
Gotcha.
And that was leadership looking out for me.
Because they liked you and you did a good job.
And because they were good leaders too. You know, there's a boss, there's a managers, and there's leaders. You know,
Right.
we know that from
Right.
business, right? And that's a whole other pitcher of beer. So, long story short, I had an opportunity to go full time with the Coast Guard. I was on the tactical law enforcement team doing counter narcotics and stuff in the Caribbean for 3 years, and I boosted my resume. I had instructor qualifications, I had experience. We had special security missions. I deployed around the world. It was badass. It was. And a guy I worked with, his wife wanted to stay in Miami. So he got out of the Coast Guard and looked for a cop job. And shopping around, there was places that paid great and had a so-so pension, places that paid so-so and had a great pension. And he found the city of Boca Raton. So he went to work for Boca. His name was Bill Adrian. He did 20 plus years. He's already retired and living happily ever after. But a couple of us followed him. He was like, hey, they're hiring. Come on up here. So I got hired by Boca Raton after my buddy Bill and my buddy Sean did. And I went to the academy in January of 2001, graduated field training, finished on-the-job training. We call it field training, the morning of September 11th.
I was about to ask. I was like, so.
Yeah. So I was starting a new career, but then, bam,
goodness.
the country got attacked, and the Coast Guard was like, we need you. And it wasn't like me special. The president wasn't like, get Marty.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody.
Maybe
Not being the president. But anyway,
Sweet.
so a ton of reservists had to go on full-time status.
Okay.
So I had to put my new career on hold and deploy to New York and help out with security around Ground Zero and everything. Anyway, I was home by Thanksgiving, and I re-jump-started my police career.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when you got back into, were you just a beat cop or?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
patrol officer, the beat cop, same thing.
Yeah.
I was a beat cop for a couple of years. I had an opportunity to go on the tactical team, and what they would do is they would study trends in burglaries and try to be in the right place at the right time, out of uniform with unmarked cars, and we were able to snag burglars. We were able to be the predators, snatching, habitual burglars, rather than the patrol officer who's just fishing.
I love data like that.
Yeah.
I'm a data guy, so we're always looking for trends and
it
stuff
was
like
neat.
that.
We would look and see, and this isn't a big secret or anything, but we'd look at to say, hey, this parking lot gets hit on the second Thursday of the month for some weird reason. Somebody breaks into a car in this parking lot, as an example. So we would sit on the parking lot and see somebody go in and smash a window and pop the trunk, and we're like, gotcha.
Right.
So it was neat. So following trends, a lot of police departments now have analysts, but they're not police officers, but they're subject matter specialists, and they look at trends. They talk to other agencies. They talk to Broward and statewide and nationwide, and they work with data, and data drives your business plan, I guess.
Yeah, and I'm glad that they do, because I'd always assumed, because data is being used everywhere, and I've never had a conversation about law enforcement. I know each department's different, so it's good to know that somebody's at least looking at it, considering it, because you start seeing statistics are statistics, but you start seeing patterns, and
and every state has their own standard to what a cop should be, but every chief of police or every sheriff decides how we're going to attack the problem, and if they're sharp, they're listening to their people, saying these are the trends, these are the numbers, these are the stats, and there's nationwide stats. Agencies report to the FBI. The FBI publishes a report. A couple months later, you have an idea what 2023 was like. Let's get ready for 2024, and let's focus on auto burglaries. Let's focus on robberies. Whatever the trend is.
A lot of political. You see that on all the at least the cop shows where it's like, oh, the mayor is putting pressure on the chief of police, and you know that he's like, we can't have this. Like, we got to close, we got to arrest.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah, it could be, But you know what? Like a decent mayor trusts his or her chief,
Right.
and a decent chief trusts his or her people.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it could be done right. It could. Like I said, there's managers and there's leaders, and you want to work for a leader.
Question: is this an answer you're willing to provide? Boca.
Yep.
How we doing?
I think we're doing well. I
Okay.
mean, this isn't Chicago.
Yeah.
It isn't like Miami. No disparity to them,
Yeah, but pretty well run department. Pretty well.
I believe so.
Yeah.
I believe so. Yeah, there's good people doing the job.
Sure.
And the management kind of comes and goes because people rise up,
Yeah.
go somewhere else. A chief might
Overall,
come in.
it's a pretty.
Overall, I was happy that I got an opportunity with Boca. I was proud to do it for 20 years. And like the military, I made lifelong friends. I learned a lot. I was able to apply what I learned before, and I learned a lot here. And now I'm sharing that with my clients, which are students.
Gotcha. So, did you do any teaching in and around? Did you train new officers or anything?
I did.
Okay.
I was a field training officer. So when you get out of the police academy,
Okay.
you jump into the car and do one-on-one on-the-job training with an experienced officer. And they had to jump through hoops to get certified. And there's a lesson plan for different phases of field training. And I was a field training officer for about 4 years.
Okay.
Close to 4 years, and I did that.
And then, I would love to talk a whole lot more about, you know, your career is in law enforcement, because I feel like there's a ton of information there.
Yeah, but it would take 20 years to tell you how cool 20 years was.
You know, but I do want to get on to, like, so you retired and decided, you know, hey, I'm still a
Still have something to
relatively,
offer.
yeah, I'm
Yep.
still a young guy, you
Right.
know, because when did you retired from the force a couple years ago?
I retired from the police department in 2021.
Okay.
In 2019, I kind of saw that, you know what, I wasn't going to get promoted. I wasn't going to get a full-time training job. I had some training opportunities, teaching opportunities with the police department they're great, because if I said, hey, Mike, teach 20 guys this technical aspect, you get your shit together so that you can teach it well, and that makes you a better technician. So when you're instructing as a cop or as a vet in the military, if you play your cards right, if you're prepared, it makes you a better employee if you train other employees and you do it right.
Right.
So every cool instructor can't have a full-time job at the police department. They had limited slots, and I didn't get it. I tried out a couple times. They gave it to some good people who rocked the job, but I didn't get the job. And honestly, I was approaching 20 years. I was getting kind of tired at the end of my second career, but I did want to keep teaching. So I came up with this side hustle in 2020. I started UMTC in 2020, and I was doing some teaching on the side. And when I saw the finish line to retire, my wife and I looked at the finances, and we're like, you know what, we can afford for you to retire and enjoy your company.
Yeah.
So I did that. I retired in 2021, and I'm continuing my passion and using my military and police experience to put my flavor on what I offer, because this market's saturated. There's 1,000 people.
That's what I was going to
doing what I
say.
do.
Like, how do you? Because there's obviously, because you look at the different departments, you got to have people who's training and doing stuff like that. So do you? You knew it was going to be competitive, and
Oh, yeah.
honestly, almost everything is competitive unless you're
Yeah.
truly unique and working with somebody like Sagacity to, like, you know, lock down your
Right.
your AI or something that the world has never seen before.
Yeah, I'm trying to be unique. I'm trying to approach. Hey, I'm not only teaching you self-defense stuff. I'm teaching you with my law enforcement experience, my police experience, and preparing you for the legal stuff that could come afterwards. And in order to be a better instructor, when I was in the military and in the police department, I got into anatomy and psychology and the science of a violent encounter, to understand why certain techniques work, whether you're disarming somebody or defending yourself. Why does a baton do what it does? Why does a stun gun do what it does? Why does pepper spray do what it does? When you understand that, it makes you a better teacher. So why not share that with the students? Hey, this is what pepper spray does. It slams your eyes shut. It constricts your throat. You feel this burn on your skin, and all those fearful things interrupt the attack.
Right.
When I was a cop or a military service member, it was about going out and getting bad guys and dragging them in front of a judge to have their day in court. As a civilian, we're teaching people to interrupt an attack and get away.
Yeah.
So the outcome is different, but the techniques are beneficial. I can teach what we've learned as military and police to the public. I'm not teaching anything classified or anything like that. It's common sense stuff, but it benefits
to you.
to me, right.
To you. It's and
Right.
because like a lot of that stuff that you know. I mean, a lot of times people prepare for years on different things, and
they have no idea why they do it.
When it happens,
Yeah.
I mean, you need to be ready.
And we have a false sense of security watching television and the movies because you know what, the music cues up.
We're shooting the gun side,
we know,
on the
we
side.
know the shark's coming because you hear the music. Oh, here it comes. Get out, get to the parking lot, get to the chopper. Right. The reality is that a violent attack comes quick. Comes now, and if you're not paying attention, it's in your face and it's over, and you don't have a chance to protect yourself. So it's about awareness to see the attack coming and then employ the right technique or the right tool.
It's very surreal because, like, I have had a gun pulled on me before, and
Not
like
fun.
it's one of those things where it hit me like 10 minutes. I was like, that really just happened.
Yeah, there's a physiology of what happened, and the attack's over, and your body's still reacting to it.
Yeah,
and your heartbeat. And
and you're like, man, that I literally had a gun pulled on me,
and it impacts your memory.
Yeah,
your perception. Your mind plays tricks on you in the heat of the moment when it happens too fast. Your eyes kind of change gears. Your ears operate differently. And it's that's what Scared to Prepared is about, explaining what that is to people so that they're like, that's why your palms get sweaty, or that's why some people don't hear when a shooting starts. Some people didn't hear it.
Yeah.
And it's weird.
That's why people don't see. Yeah.
It's weird. And so if somebody comes up and you're a witness, hey, what happened? You know what? Your mind plays tricks on you, and what you saw wasn't exactly what happened. What your brain perceived isn't necessarily what happened. But it's not until you get a couple nights of sleep and get some water in you and flush out the adrenaline and the 31 other hormones that dump into your bloodstream for an emergency, you got to purge all that and get back to like status normal to get a good recollection of what happened and make your statement to the police about the attack. It's weird.
So where do you recommend the starting point for like someone who's just, hey, I want to make sure that I'm
safe and my family's
safe. Yeah.
Sure. I sit down with them and have a cup of coffee and say, hey, what are you looking for? If you know, tell me what you're looking for, and I can help you plot a path to that. A lot like your business. What do you need? How can we help you get from point A to point B? What can I recommend for you? If your perception of what you need is off, I'm going to give you some guidance as an expert.
Okay.
And kind of go from there. And guns aren't for everybody.
Right.
Maybe you want pepper spray. All right, let's dive into what pepper spray can do for you and pick a good product and get some good training and get good habits in your life so that if you need it, you can use that pepper spray.
Yeah. Okay. So it's not only guns, but you can sit down. You can sit down and have a conversation with them and be like, okay, here's the route that you might want to consider doing.
Sure.
Sign up for do our workshop. Is that the so if it's, say I'm a pepper spray person, do I come to your workshop?
Yeah, come to the seminar and understand force, understand violence, understand the legal limitations in your protecting yourself, and because you can color outside the lines and get in trouble. And I want to keep you out of trouble, and I want you to pick the right product, train the right way, and carry and have good habits for you and your family, so that maybe you don't even need it.
Gotcha.
Right.
Or is it a Zoom or is it in person? Or
it's in person. I like doing it in person. I like connecting with people because I use humor in my classes. I like seeing when somebody.
Yeah, you're the father of dad jokes, right?
I am. Yeah.
I mean,
I tell at least that. You know what? In the early '90s, I would tell dumb dad jokes, and I was typically the oldest guy in the class for my military classes or police classes, and students started calling me Uncle Marty. There was a comedian in the '80s, Uncle Larry, and he was dirty. He was absolutely filthy, and he'd do like Captain Obvious type jokes and say, "Just a tip from your Uncle Larry." You could probably Google it. So I, kind of mimicking him, I said something like "Super Captain Obvious" in a training class, and said sarcastically, "Just a tip from your Uncle Marty." And students started calling me Uncle Marty, and it stuck. And then when I told a bad joke, they were like, "Oh, that's a bad Marty joke." And then the police guys, "Oh, that's a bad Marty joke." And so I put that into the title of the company. Uncle Marty Trading and Consulting, just to put a little bit of humor, but the abbreviation looks professional.
Oh, it looks great. Yeah. I mean, it's to me, like I correlate, the Marines or,
Yeah,
and
I wanted a military-looking crest. This is my family coat of arms that I modified to look like a...
Beautiful. I love that.
right.
Yeah. I mean, mine's all in the family too, my Olivia and Hazel. So that's how it's like,
That's neat.
I keep, I believe it. And you know what? Keep the family in it. It's my own thing. And this is like because you could retire. You don't have to do this, right?
don't.
Yeah.
I don't. I'm living off my pensions.
Yeah.
Pensions.
Yeah.
That's right. I said too.
Nice.
I'm living off my pensions. I didn't have to keep working, but I love helping people. And I'm like, I could give you a ride if you need a ride. I could buy you a sandwich, you need a sandwich. But I like helping people feel
You're passionate about it.
more prepared for an emergency.
Yeah, because
right,
you've seen
exactly.
you've seen the outcome of it.
I have.
You've seen like where people go from like.
I've taken reports from victims that were traumatized,
Right.
victimized, and I don't want that for good people.
Right, because that's something that you hope
Right.
nobody ever has to experience.
Right,
But
and not to disparage, like going back to your earlier question, like every city has crime. Every city has crime.
Right.
Boca does a good job. We have a great cops policing our streets, great detectives following up on investigations, but bad shit happens here.
Yeah.
And it's about how we respond to it and what we learn from it, and your neighbors can learn from your having been burglarized.
Yeah. Another thing,
Or you can learn from your
no,
neighbors.
it's crazy because it's like I had a guy, but like I actually had another situation. Like the first 6 months of me being a homeowner, I had somebody like I literally saw somebody cutting. It was cutting our screen
To get into your backyard.
to get into our window.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we had opened the window because it was like that
Behind the house, right?
Yeah,
In
well,
the backyard or side?
No, it was above the kitchen window that we'd. My wife at the time she'd opened it up and she was like, "Oh, it's the first cool day." Get
So
that
she opened the window with the screen.
She's from Colorado, and she's like, half of them don't even have damn air conditioners out there.
Or
So
locks on their door. They don't lock their
they're
doors.
just
Right. Yeah.
kind of weirdos. Like to me, we have an AC. Like shut the damn window. But my dad used to close the door. Close the door. You're gonna let
You're
all
air
that
conditioning the whole neighborhood. What are you doing?
you're air conditioning the world.
Right.
And so,
But if we live in a nice neighborhood, we tend to relax.
Yeah.
We don't lock up our stuff, and that draws the bad actors. So we go, hey, Boca Raton, nice neighborhood, nice cars, nice. Let's go see if they lock the doors. And they cruise our neighborhoods at night, and they look for nice cars with the mirrors out. It means the doors are unlocked. You have a nice car, you park it and lock it, the mirrors go zzz. So they go down the street, they look for mirrors out, the car's unlocked. And they hit car after car after car.
See, this is I haven't even thought of that because like that's so true. I didn't even but I'm not a bad actor. Like I'm not looking at stuff like that. But to draw on your experience, it's like, hey, that's a soft target right there.
Exactly. That's a soft target. Exactly. But if you lock your doors, the mirrors are in. If you have a motion activated light, it deters some of the chicken shit burglars. If you have alarm signs, a big dog, a neighborhood watch.
The signs, I hear the signs are like a big deterrent.
The signs are a big deterrent. They can be. Are they magic? No.
No,
Are they 100%
but it's
guaranteed?
like
No.
if somebody's like dead set on like, hey,
If somebody comes
I'm
up to
getting that
break
thing,
into a house, then they're not coming up here for your address unless you pissed them off. But if they come up here and they cruise your block and you have a sign that says protected by ADT, and he's got a sign that says protected by Brinks, and he's got a sign that says protected by Smith & Wesson, but my house has no sign, which house is the burglar going to pick? The one that might not have an alarm system or a gun.
Smith will protect you.
You never seen those?
I love those.
Those are gag signs,
Yeah.
Or there's some crude humor where somebody says we don't call 911 or whatever, and I'm like, that's dark humor. It's not that we are supposed to be shooting burglars, but we want to scare them away.
Yeah.
And you know what? There's professional burglars, there's amateur burglars, there's the ones in the middle. If the sign deters the professional and the chicken shit dummy, I'll take it.
Right.
But you got to worry about the people that'll roll the dice and try to get in your house, even though you've got an alarm system there. Because maybe you didn't put it on. Because maybe it's a pain in the ass, and you didn't arm it.
It is a pain. I mean, most of them are a pain.
About 65, don't hold me to the number, 65 to like 85 people with a good alarm system in their house don't use it.
Yeah, because it's a pain.
It's a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
Because the dog will set it off while they're at dinner, and then they got to stop dinner and come home. The
Yeah,
cops are
the
coming. 3 alarms might cost you money in the county or whatever. And so they're like, hey, you spend a small chunk of change on alarming your house, and you're not using it.
Yeah.
Use
Seems
it.
kind of silly.
It's silly. Yeah, exactly.
Do you do shooting training, like
do.
actually firearm training?
I do.
Because I know we talked about the preparedness, but
I specialize in new shooters.
Okay.
And I do intermediate training as refresher training for people that are already experienced shooters.
Awesome.
So I do that. So I teach fundamentals to new people, and I get them the experience that is like, hey, this isn't so bad. Again, I'm not pushing guns on people that don't want guns. But if you're curious about it.
Look, when you say, hey, and I don't think you're pushing, but if I'm going to do self-defense, like I'm going to have a gun. So like to me, it's the most efficient.
It's the best. It's one of the best, most efficient ways to protect yourself with a tool.
Right.
But there's nothing wrong with jiu-jitsu. There's nothing wrong with a stun gun. It's just that it depends on the circumstance.
Is there any other product that we haven't talked about that you currently offer?
I offer my training services and recommendations for any of that stuff. I recently partnered with the USCCA, and that's an insurance and a training organization for things like self-defense. And I partnered with Saber Red. They sell pepper spray.
Gotcha.
And so I get a commission if you buy.
Oh yeah, I mean that makes sense.
Yeah, because I carried pepper spray as a coastie. I carried pepper spray as a police officer. I've pepper sprayed 3,000 cops for training, so I know how it works. I can lecture about.
Christian said you could pepper spray him after the episode.
All right, sure, I'll go get
So
some.
he said he's got you.
But yeah, like why does a baton work? Why does a stun gun work? We carried the Taser brand stun guns as cops, and we had to get hit with it. I had to get pepper spray to be able to teach it and carry it. They wanted us to understand decontamination and not making the decision lightly to just blast somebody in the face with liquid fire, So understanding how all that stuff works, I make recommendations. I don't sell guns. I partnered with people that sell other training and pepper spray, and I'm working on a stun gun type of certification to kind of round out what I offer.
Beautiful. So I know. So this has been an amazing episode.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming on. I know you have what day is the
Scared to Prepared is February 3rd.
Okay.
From noon to 5 here in Boca Raton.
And this is 2024, guys, by the way. And just for future, where do you publish? Because, the reality is not everybody's going to hear it by this, but the post is going to be live. So say somebody wants to, hey, say it's March or April or, September of this year. Where can they find your future workshops?
I do the workshops. I do the seminar every 2 months here in Boca.
Okay.
So if you follow me, if you stalk me on Facebook and stalk me on Instagram.
Okay, we'll put it on. We'll make sure your show notes are in.
Right. Anytime I have a class coming, I schedule it and I blast it on there so people see it.
Okay.
And a lot of my business is word of mouth. It's like if you were to come to my class, have a good time, and tell all your friends. A lot of it is word of mouth. And I'm a one-man show. I'm a sole proprietor for a small LLC. Yeah. So I'm not looking for. I'm not getting rich off of this business. I'm not supporting my family or paying my bills off this business. I'm doing something I enjoy doing.
Passion
I love doing
project.
it. And you know what? And if I can cover my expenses, put a couple bucks in the bank, great. You're helping me out.
Oh, hell yeah. So, Uncle Marty, thank you so much for coming back on.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, and guys, I'm actually going to be attending it. So if you guys follow me on social media and you want to know exactly what my thoughts are on it, I will be sharing my thoughts on the Scared to Prepared workshop.
Cool. And if you want to sit in the class with Mike, go to my website. It's on the lower third right over here.
Yeah.
There.
Yeah.
It's UMTC-instructor.com. I post all the training there. Look for the Scared to Prepared seminar every 2 months and come learn with us. And it's at the Cinemark Movie Bistro.
Oh, I love that place.
So it's a restaurant with a bar, and we're not flipping guns around in the class. It's all classroom and discussion.
Nice.
So you can eat lunch and have a cocktail in my class. If you bring a drink into my class, I'm funnier.
That's fair. So, well, guys, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Amazing Entrepreneurs. I know I have learned a lot, and I'm going to be learning even more when I go to the workshop. So, again, thanks. Contact Marty. His stuff will be in the show notes, and I will see you guys again next week. Don't get caught lacking. See ya.